So Phreak already posted the patch preview for 14.22, so let's see what Riot is thinking. Blitzcrank is getting a 20% increase of total AD ratio on the E, which, if you think about it, this champ has like, what, 60, 70, 80 base AD. So this should roughly increase his E damage by, I think, like 10 damage, especially in the early game. It's not going to be a lot. In my experience, when I played ADC and when I got hooked, it's almost never a 10 damage difference whether or not I die. There might be some interesting things with something like AD Blitzcrank jungle here, but unless that becomes a thing, I don't think this is going to be a big buff. Briar is getting a 35 base HP buff. So apparently what Phreak said and what Riders said, early game base HP buffs tend to actually benefit champions in higher elos a lot more, because pro players and higher elo players are generally the ones who make use of early game strength of champions. So they are more likely to either go for dives, or they are more likely to go for early game invades, which makes these sort of buffs much more useful. But I don't think this is going to be very impactful for lower elos, so that's just mostly placebo there. Fizz is getting a 10% AP buff on his Q and 5% on his W. Wow, so he's getting 15% AP on his WQ, which is basically unavoidable damage, and he usually does this multiple times, even in team fights, because he, of course, usually builds Zonias and he has E and many getaway tools, so he can juggle in and out of fights. And 50% AP ratio is gonna be at 2 items like 30 to 40 bonus damage on his Q than he previously would have. And in the late game, when he has like 400 to 500 AP, if he gets to that point, well then it's gonna be obviously like 70 more damage. So I think this is actually gonna be big for Fizz, but it's more so the fact that I think there are some champions in the meta, like Syndra, whose play rate rose up, especially after they got played at Worlds, who are very, very weak against Fizz. And for that reason, Fizz might just come back. But mostly as a solo queue pick, even though he could be played in Pro, I don't think he's going to be played there. Irelia is getting a passive refresh on structures and bonus damage to structures. It's only going to be 50% of the passive damage. But from what I've heard on Twitter about this, apparently this is going to make Irelia a legitimately like dangerous side lane threat, because this is in the early game, this is basically gonna like nearly double her damage to towers. So it's gonna be much more easy to take plates if the enemy goes for a recall, and in the late game it's gonna be very, very easy to take tier 2 towers if the enemy cannot match the Irelia and they need to go with their team as a 5-man 2 dragon or something. So this might actually be very, very important, but probably especially for top lane Irelia. Katarina is getting 2 seconds in the early game off of his E, which is actually pretty nice for the champion because you don't often get that many resets. But I don't really know how this would affect her laning phase at all. So I don't know why this is that important. And the ultimate cooldown goes down 15 seconds in the early game. Okay, so these are just cooldown buffs. The numbers are going to be the same. This might make her more likely to be able to escape, I guess, after she goes for a trade. But apart from that, I don't see how this is going to be like a massive buff. I mean, I should consider that her ult gets partially reset when she gets killed, right? So there's going to be maybe some important percentages there that might make her easier to get 2 ults off in a teamfight or something. Kayle is getting passive attack speed goes up. Oh, Jesus. Okay, so 0.5% AP. So this is an AP Kayle buff. The max attack speed is also getting doubled from the AP ratio part. Kayle is already, I think, in a decent position. But many of her problems are that she's still very easy to get dove in the top lane. I don't have much of a knowledge about this champ, but I guess we'll just see what Nemesis ends up cooking with this if he ends up practicing her in solo queue, or some of the top lane Kayle players. Rumble's base health is going up by 30, so this is going to be like a decent early game buff, but I don't think this champion struggled with the early game anyway. I guess if you go for all-ins, it's gonna increase the win rate in a way where Rumble players who go for all-ins are occasionally gonna get more kills, or occasionally gonna get dives off that they otherwise would not have been able to. But usually if you play against a Rumble, the matchups tend to be rather one-sided. So either you beat him or you hard lose to him and you just want to avoid him and give him prio in the early game. So, but it might still be like good for him. So Swain turned out to be really weak from what I've heard, and Magic Resist is getting buffed by, so this has to be the scaling MR. At level 1 and 0.2 scaling? This is hilariously weak. This is like, so for those who don't know, scaling stats in League are not linear. So if this is 0.2, at level 10 you're not getting 2, you're only getting like 0.15-ish. So they basically just gave him like 2 or 3 magic resist at level 10. I don't see this as impactful at all. I don't think this is useful. Q damage goes up by 20 at max rank, and the E cooldown goes down by 2. Now this is actually very good. The E cooldown going down is something that is very, very important for bot lane Swain. The ultimate heal ratio is, health ratio that is getting increased. But I think the bigger problem with this champ now is that it really just doesn't deal damage. I guess his explosion damage is contingent in him staying alive as long as possible. Or like the champ in general just wants to stay alive as long as possible. But his overall DPS is still very low. I guess we'll see how this affects him, but I wouldn't consider these buffs to be very big apart from the E. Okay, Varus W on-hit damage is going up by 3 at all ranks. It's just a minor buff. Vayne, R bonus AD going from 25, so it's just getting 10 bonus at every single rank, right? Yeah, 10 bonus AD at every single rank. This is actually kind of meaningful, especially because the Q has an AD ratio. But I mean, we will see how we will have to see how static shift changes to be able to say what this means, because static shift changing is essentially a bigger Vayne change than this. Vel'Koz E cooldown. So as I've already posted about the fact that Vel'Koz, in his opinion, should not get buffed at all. But what we thought was that Vel'Koz basically is gonna get a placebo buff to make his play rate rise higher. But the E cooldown going down by 2 seconds, I don't think he can use this twice in team fights. And 12 is going to be the same both after this patch and previously. And the ult cooldown being 20 seconds less at the first rank. I don't think these are changes that are going to break Vel'Koz, so I think what we assumed is going to happen is that... I almost just choked. So I think with what... So I guess it's gonna happen with... So I guess what's gonna happen is what we assumed, essentially, is that he's getting some cooldown, mostly placebo buffs to make his play rate rise higher, because the champion is already relatively strong, especially according to his mains. Vi's passive shield is going up by 2%. This is just like, I mean, it's nice, slightly better numbers. Wukong mana is going up by 30, and the W cooldown going down by 4 seconds, level 1? Wow, this is actually interesting. But this is definitely better for top lane Wukong than jungle. I don't think this impacts jungle as much. So I don't think it's a big enough change to make top lane Wukong come back, but some people might end up playing it, and we'll see how strong the champion is even without buffs in top lane, because yeah. The nerfs are Aatrox R bonus AD going from 20 to 45 to 20 to 40, so this is, I mean, I guess a minor late game buff to Aatrox. Actually, it might not be that minor, but I didn't see that much of Aatrox anyway. Well, I don't really see the point of this, but we'll see. I don't think this is a big nerf either. Anivia's armor growth is going down from 4.9 to 4.5. So, wait. This is 3 armor at level 10, roughly speaking. Again, I have to state that this is not a linear scaling, so it's not going to be a 4. It's going to be roughly like 3 or 2 armor at level 10. I don't think it's very impactful. Mostly placebo. E-AP ratio going down by 5%. Okay. And I think this is 10% if the enemy is slowed by the ult. So this is actually big. This part is relatively big, but the armor part is meaningless. Okay, now CORKI. This champion, by the way, is basically the strongest champion in the game. If you look at the win rates that is on bot lane CORKI, it's actually insane, and it gets better the higher elo you go. The champion cannot be fought in a 1v1. Every single ADC basically loses to him in just a straight up clicking on each other, and he uses his abilities, and you're gonna lose all of your health. And this combined with the fact that the champion just has like one of the biggest and easiest escape tools in his W that also happens to deal damage, and he also is one of the best poke AD champions now, I guess. This champion is broken. And looking at these nerfs, 2.5 to 2 AD ratio growth. Again, this is gonna be 3-ish attack damage loss at level 10. This is not gonna be impactful enough, I don't think. And the mana growth is usually meaningless. I mean, this is actually a big number though. So this would mean 100 mana at level 10, which is actually a lot. But again, this champion builds Essence Reaver. Usually whoever plays CORKI goes Essence 2nd or 3rd. I guess it's more incentivized to go Essence Reaver now than before, but that's the only thing that changes. This champion is still basically the strongest ADC in the game, apart from like champions like Seraphine or something. But you have to abuse this. This is insanely broken. I might put out like a mathematically optimal CORKI video soon. Ilaoi's base AD is going down by 3 and mana growth by 10. Wow, these mana nerfs are actually relatively big. Again, this is like 70 mana at level 10. And yeah, I don't think the base AD is going to change much unless some Illaoi players figure out this actually hurts her wave clear. But I don't think that's the case. I think Illaoi, generally speaking, overkills the backline minions anyway. So this is... No, but the mana sucks. Wow. Okay, the mana change sucks for Illaoi. Okay. Jax ultimate cooldown is up by 10 seconds. This champion is still going to be strong. Active damage down by 50. Okay. Thank God. This is going to be very good for ADC players, because you're going to see slightly less of Jax now. But champ is still relatively strong and does the same things in teamfights. But the ult 50 damage nerf is going to be, I guess, kinder to ADCs and weak squishy champions. Lily's armor growth, wow, down by 0.7, so this is a 4 to 5 armor nerf at level 10. And the passive monster heal is getting fixated at 39, okay. But the champion is still gonna be max health, almost always, no? I guess the only thing this impacts is she won't be able to regen as much health from... If she got poked down, she can't just go into Raptors and get like 300 health all of a sudden. It's gonna be slightly less. The champ is still playable, but I guess weaker to some of the 80 counters now, potentially. Okay. Mordekaiser's E damage is down by 10 at all ranks and 0.2 AP? Wow. Wait, at 200... I mean, he's not getting 200 AP, but this is like... Even at one item, this is 20 less damage. 30, considering the base damage nerf as well. I mean, it's not gonna break the champ, but it also slightly hurts his wave clear. Yeah, I didn't see this coming. The champ is not getting played either. I think these are relatively big nerfs compared to some of the useless armor and more nerfs that we are seeing. Poppy, this champ is insanely strong and played on multiple roles. Just abuse Poppy, by the way. Base AD is going down by 4, as I say that. That's actually a relatively big nerf, wow. And level 1 attack speed is going up. So it's slightly compensated, I guess, by 0.3. It's still a nerf, but I think this champ is still very strong. I mean, I guess this might benefit support Poppy more than the others. This champ, I think, is still going to be pretty good. Seraphine's QAP ratio. Now, I'm a Seraphine expert, and I can tell you that this sucks. You want to max Q, even though they changed Seraphine many times, you still want to max Q. it's not gonna change her wave clear, because even on support Seraphine, if you have 4 points on your Q, it destroys the backline minions, even without AP almost. It just like destroys the backline minions. Sometimes you have to E, but it still does the thing. But the problem is, if you think about it, this is on the double Q, this is a 10% less AP ratio. And if the enemy is on low health, then this is like 15. Sorry, I should say this is 20%. And if the enemy is low HP, this is like nearly a 30% nerf. So this sucks. This actually sucks. I'm still gonna play the champion because it's one of the strongest early game lane bullies in the bot lane if you play her as a carry. But this really sucks for her. Shen getting nerfed, passive cooldown up by 1, cooldown refund is going down by 0.5, okay, and the ultimate shield is getting hit by 10 base, and oh my god, wait, late game, this is massive. Okay, late game Shen is significantly nerfed on the shield. And in my experience, it actually happens often that you just try to chew through this shield. Okay, I think Shen is getting a significant nerf with this. Wow. This sucks for him. Anyway, Sylas health growth down by 7. So this is gonna mean 40 to 50 health at level 10. It's not meaningless, it's 1 basic attack. But in the early game, the champion is still gonna do the same thing that he usually does. Yeah, he's gonna feel it. It's 1 basic attack. Sinja getting nerfed. W damage goes down by... So 5% AP ratio nerf. And 20 late game base damage. Interesting. I don't think it impacts the wave clear. It slightly impacts her burst. I don't know why she's getting nerfed. I think she has a lot of problems with early game. But, I mean, if any Syndra players are listening to this, I would still recommend just going Ludens instead of the Magic Penetration build Rush. Magic Pen items are good at 2nd and 3rd item, but I would recommend people to buy Ludens because first, it helps your wave clear more than the Pen items do. And second, in the early game, you don't have damage on this champion. Only on your ult, I guess. And most of the times you interact with range champs is just QE. And if you interact with enemies in short durations and only 1 or 2 abilities, then Ludens outshines every other percentage-based increase in the game. And penetration is a percentage-based increase, whereas Ludens is a flat increase mostly. So I would recommend people to go Ludens. And the champ is still going to be fine, but I don't see these nerfs. I don't see the reason for them. Udyr, this champ needs to get nerfed, but mostly... I mean, I guess the damage is big even though you go full tank. Our damage is going down by a very considerable amount, but this is, I think, only later on. And ult damage is going down on the max HP damage. I mean, this is mostly strong against... but this is mostly a big nerf against tanks. And this might actually hurt his jungle clear. I just realized that later on into the game. Ult monster cap. Okay, so this is what I wanted to mention. Bonus AD to... Okay, so... I mean, I guess this is a buff for... I mean, I guess it's... No, it has to be a nerf for all champions, but I guess it's not as bad for tank Udyr. They're trying to make Udyr basically more of a full tank, or... with these changes, but the above changes kind of required you to go Lianjis anyway. I guess we'll see. Champ is still gonna be fine, but definitely weaker on the damage side. Maokai is getting adjusted to have 5 more movement speed, 30 more health. This is again good for early game dives, but basically nothing else. Actually, for support Maokai, this is good. For support Maokai, this is good. And E movement speed, those are the saplings. I didn't even know that it's based on boots. Wow. Okay. This part is mostly meaningless, but I guess you don't have to rush boots now. So this has to be a nerf to support Maokai. I don't really think that these changes are going to do a lot, if I'm being honest. Okay. But these seem like buffs overall. Cassante Q damage is down by 10 at all ranks, and RE dash speed is up by a lot. Okay. I think... no, I think this is a nerf. I think overall this is a nerf. I will have to speak some sentiments, but I think this is a nerf because the Q is happening very often. Barrier is getting 20 less at all ranks. In my experience, Barrier never gets fully destroyed. I don't think this is very important. The biggest reason why you take this is because of the low cooldown it has compared to heal. And you can basically just level 1, level 2, use this ability for a trade, and then you're always gonna have like 100 more health than your enemy, and by the time you guys go for an all-in, you're gonna have it back again. Now this is countered by teleport, but apart from that, I don't think this is gonna change much. The reason why this is played is mostly the cooldown, in my opinion. Side lane minion move speed. Oh, this is interesting. Scaling down. So basically, minions on the side lane are gonna be slightly slower. That's the conclusion from this. The longer the game goes, until 14, okay. Smite targeting forgiveness, epic monster targeting forgiveness, 300 to 125. I didn't even know this is a thing. Smiting of Void Grub corpse will not target a living Void Grub as often. Okay. Okay, I see. I didn't even know this is a mechanic. Interesting. Opportunity has 5 more AD now, no movement speed, and the lethality passive is also up by 1. I think these are overall buffs. I think this is gonna make the item actually stronger on the champion that usually play this. Especially ADCs, no? Am I wrong about this? No, like poke ADCs are gonna love this. Interesting. Yumi's Ghostblade is now, I guess, primarily gonna be the movement speed item, which makes sense. 5 less AD, 4% more movement speed, okay. Static Shift. Now these are the big 2 changes, Yontal and Static Shift, and I'm probably gonna make a separate video about 200 less gold, 10% less AD, sorry, 10 less AD, and 10% less attack speed. 120 damage to 6 targets on kill, 3-second cooldown to 60 damage for 3 attacks. So it's basically gonna be 3 attacks now instead of only 1. And it has a cooldown. And it doesn't need to kill anything. The stats being... So the passive is basically gonna be... But the takedown, champion takedown, is just gonna refresh the thing. I think it's gonna be stronger on the passive, but way weaker considering the base stats. They're making this item much more about the passive. I mean, it's only gonna be ADCs playing this, and I don't think a lot of ADCs are gonna like this. We will see. I'm gonna have to go deep into the numbers of this. Yontal is getting 50 gold more. That's okay. 10 less AD, 25% more attack speed, and no crit, but now you're gonna get crit if you hit enemies. 0.2 crit chance on attack up to 25. Oh, so okay, so this is 2% crit chance. They miswrote that. I think this is 2%. Meaning you're gonna have to hit an enemy 13 times to get 25%. That's very weak. Wait, what? If it's 0.2, this does nothing. This is useless. But I think it's 2%. Okay. Flurry on attacking an enemy champion gain 30%. That's for 4 seconds. What do you gain? Oh, what? So I think this means crit, right? You gain 30% crit for 4 seconds, 40-second cooldown, -1 on hit and -2 on crit. I'm gonna be honest, I have no idea what this means, but I believe you gain 30% critical strike chance or attack speed, and it's gonna get less the more you hit them. But overall, they seem like buffs. Sorry, for Yontal, they seem like buffs. because the item previously was not built by anyone. The passive sucked. You couldn't make use of it unless you had a lot of attack speed and crit chance, and it just didn't do enough, right? So I think that's it. I think the Seraphine nerf sucks. I would recommend everyone to still abuse CORKI. Poppy, I mean, the 480 nerf is kind of bad, but you can still play him or her. Seraphine, I will see how strong it is, but these nerfs are big. Udyr nerfs, I can't really pinpoint how strong these are, but I think these are the... And I guess the biggest other change is Aurelia becoming an insane split pusher, Kayle getting more attack speed, and the static Shiv Yanta changes are going to be the biggest impactful changes of this patch, right?